If you're deciding between the Line 6 modelers from the flagship Helix floor to the tiny but mighty Helix Stomp, there's one thing you should consider in addition to how they sound and feel. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to the video. If this is our first time meeting, my name is Justin and I'm all about worship guitar, helping you sound and play your best for Jesus. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to support these videos and my ministry. If you've met before, welcome back. There are plenty of videos providing tone comparisons between the various Line 6 models out there, and if you ask me, having the exact same blocks on these devices get the same sound. I actually did a Helix Stomp and Pod Go wireless comparison video, and I've since learned that the differences in tone come down to the setting on my wireless receiver. Also, just a quick aside as to why the Helix and Helix LT might sound better than the Helix Stomp and Pod Go. It comes down to having more blocks. The more blocks you have, the more you're able to add post and or pre-compressors, EQs, stereo enhancement. So while the core tone of the devices might be the same, the Helix and Helix LT have a lot more flexibility to manipulate that core tone further. So rather than rehash tone comparison videos, hey guys, last minute Justin here. In the end, I decided that I will indeed put in a short comparison clip between my three devices that I have, the Helix, the Helix Stomp, and the Pod Go. All the settings are the same amp, same cab, same overdrive, same delay, same reverb. Every block is exactly the same, so let's hear if there is going to be a difference. I'll share the one thing that people aren't talking about when it comes to choosing between Line 6 modelers, and that comes down to one word: utility. Utility is different from tone, and I believe it's just as important as tone when it comes to choosing a modeler. To put it simply, utility is the sum total of how a modeler can fit into different use case scenarios without needing external gear for augmentation or supplementation. A modeler that is able to reconfigure itself to multiple use case scenarios is going to have more utility than a modeler that only has one use case scenario. So how do you define a use case scenario? It's an interplay between your assigned role on the worship team and the number of outputs needed to fulfill that role. For the fundamental use case as a modeling device, you need a mono quarter-inch input for your guitar and a stereo pair of outputs. All Line 6 devices meet these requirements, and in my opinion, they've gone above and beyond to give the best-in-class multi-effects experience across all their devices. So the Helix, Helix Stomp, and Pod Go all get a check here. I'm going to share 2 additional use cases which you may not have considered but will be important as you scale up your role in the worship ministry, which may need you to get a device with greater utility. Number 1, using your modeler as a mixer. You might need to process additional instruments because your sound setup is limited and you need a model to be like a mini mixer for your worship team. As a mini mixer, you need to have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. The Pod Go is severely limited here, not having any inputs other than for mono guitar. The Helix Stomp has stereo inputs and the ability to split the stereo signal path to do mono for independent processing, so you could process 2 instruments. The Helix is where you're going to have the most inputs and outputs. In addition to the guitar input, there's an aux input, a mic input, and 2 pairs of stereo returns. As far as outputs for live use go, the Helix has stereo balanced XLR, stereo unbalanced quarter-inch, and 2 pairs of stereo sends. What this all means is that you could potentially have 4 instruments processed through the Helix over 4 signal paths, each having its distinct input and output, no sharing, no creative submixing of outputs. This is huge. If any of you guys are doing an outreach program, let's say an 80s themed party night, and the outdoor venue has a limited sound system, the Helix could function as the mixer for a small 4-piece band. Just don't expect to stack 4 delays and 4 reverbs together in one signal path. To give a more recent and tangible example, I recently did a concert at a venue where there weren't enough inputs for my larger than usual band. I had to submix the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar into one XLR output. Since I was using the Helix, I could very easily create a separate signal path and assign the aux input to process the acoustic guitar. This would not have been possible on any other device. Number 2, using a modeler as a tracks rig. This is the use case for music directors. In addition to your guitar rig input and output, you also want a way to process and discretely send an output of click and cues. I use Ableton Live as an integrated solution to send click, cues, auxiliary tracks, and MIDI automation, so being able to connect to the laptop is a must. All 3 devices, the Pod Go, Helix Stomp, and Helix, are USB interfaces whose inputs and outputs can be routed in digital audio workstations. But as to the flexibility of implementation, that's where we're going to have wildly different experiences. The Pod Go is the most limited of all, with only 2 USB outputs that are blended to the main output. I have a workaround video in the pipeline that can split the signal between the front of house and the in-ear monitoring system so that you can send your guitars to the FOH while sending click and cues to the IEM system. It will be attached as a card here sometime in the future. The Helix Stomp has an advantage in that it has more USB outputs, allowing you to route them to the send output. If your IEM system is the Live Mix, which accepts a stereo aux in, all you need to send click and cues is a stereo cable with a headphone quarter-inch TRS adapter. And coming in at the heavyweight of tracks rigs capability, the Helix is going to have the most utility. Not only can you process the click and cues track with compression and EQ to treat it better for your IEM system, you can even route a microphone and use it for both leading worship and music directing by splitting the output in an A-B configuration and assigning that to a foot switch. In my WL/MD patch, I dedicate one of the signal paths to microphone processing and put a split block at the end. One side will have delay and reverb for the vocal fields, and the other will be dry and extra compressed so I can speak to the band, all toggled by a foot switch. I'll also have foot switches dedicated to controlling Ableton from starting, stopping, and jumping back to a section marker if my worship leader informs me beforehand that he may or may not repeat a chorus or a bridge. I use the other signal path to process my guitar and the click cues track. Now, that limits my tonal options in that I'm really treating the Helix like a Helix Stomp, but let's face it, when you're leading worship and playing guitar, you want to have as little complication as possible with your signal chain. The less blocks to worry about, the better, which is why I also automate my snapshots on the Helix with MIDI on Ableton. In the previous video, I've explained the automation process which will truly have my session hands-free as soon as I press play on Ableton. check out the linked playlist for more of that. If you want me to drop a copy of that WL/MD patch, do let me know in the comments. And speaking of questions, which device are you looking to buy now that you've learned about the extra utility of these units? I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts in the comments section below. That's it for me. Thanks for watching this video. If you've gotten value out of it, like it, share it with someone whom you know is deciding between Line 6 devices. Until next time, I'm Justin, and I'm all about worship guitar. And I know you're going to make the right choice in buying the new piece of gear.